Are you keeping up? If you've made it to part 3, wow, you're seriously into feather. That's great to see. In this part, we'll be designing a mysterious creature while sharing various feather tips along the way. What you're about to learn are techniques, tricks, and even a few cheats. If you're already comfortable with feather, these tips will be super useful. As mentioned in part 1, this creature's motif is a satellite, specifically inspired by Sputnik. Its 4 antennas can be reinterpreted in many ways, as legs, fins, antennae, or even spikes. I also took inspiration from various creatures and characters. The goal was to create something cute and mystical like a sea fairy, while still feeling like a real animal rather than something too fantasy-like. This sketch looks a bit like a cephalopod or a jellyfish, maybe even a goldfish. Structurally, though, it leans more toward a cephalopod. Now, let's refine this concept further. A glowing jellyfish-like texture would work well, making it feel transparent and luminous. Instead of having too many wrinkles or flowing parts, I want a simple silhouette with intricate details. Of course, there's no need to overdraw at this stage. Once you have a clear idea, it's time to jump into 3D drawing. Jumping straight into 3D can be tricky, so let's start by sketching the creature's basic pose. Since it has a transparent, glowing texture, set up your brush accordingly. Low opacity with a glow material applied. By now, you should be comfortable bending 3D guides. Here's a tip. Think of it as warping the orange guideline to shape your form. We'll be using this guide to draw the creature's body, so make sure to save it for later. When painting, keep your strokes in a consistent direction. Slightly overlapping strokes will create a unique texture, especially with transparent layers. This effect should flow naturally across the entire body. Since we'll be reshaping the legs with Liquify later, make sure to paint densely. A narrow brush like the cube brush works better than a wide brush for this. For a more natural look, adjust the opacity as you paint, fading from the outer edges of the legs inward. Keep an eye on the texture details as you work. Next, let's draw the core structure of the fins. Using the first brush, which has a tapered shape, allows you to create smooth pressure transitions without manually adjusting pen pressure. Make sure to carefully finish the lines from the legs up to the head. Adjust the size as needed. If it feels too large, scale it down slightly. In feather, transform strokes keep their original thickness, which can sometimes be inconvenient. So, try to decide the scale beforehand whenever possible. If you've adjusted the scale to fill the gaps, go ahead and duplicate and rotate the shape. You didn't forget to save the guide, right? Load it again and use it to draw the eyes and patterns. If the patterns are too bright and hard to see, duplicate them and adjust the scale to create an inner pattern. Then, darken the inner pattern, making the outer pattern stand out more clearly. We've mentioned this throughout the tutorial, but adjusting the thickness, brush type, color, or material of existing curves is very useful. Great! Now that the body is complete, let's refer back to the thumbnail sketch and position the creature accordingly. The design has evolved quite a bit from the original concept, so we'll make some adjustments to the positioning as well. To maintain a natural flow of movement, the creature is now oriented left to right, aligning with the passenger's gaze in the submarine. Once the direction is set, adjust the pose to match. Keep in mind that Liquify and Feather works as a circle based on the view angle, not a sphere, so be mindful of this as you shape the pose. This step requires a lot of imagination. Think about water resistance, how the fins and body would move, and the overall visual composition as you refine the pose. You don't need to make big changes all at once. Adjust it little by little until it looks right. For a more dynamic pose, try separating the legs into different groups after setting the overall shape. Also, make sure the fins have a slight curve so they don't appear too flat from certain angles. By keeping a consistent viewing angle and applying Liquify at regular intervals, you can create a more elegant, wavy effect. However, for this piece, a simpler silhouette suits the creature better, so we won't be using this shape. Now, let's make some final size adjustments and wrap up the creature design. The artwork is almost complete. In the next part, we'll create the terrain and vegetation, building an environment that surrounds the submarine and creature. I'll also show you a fun technique for creating modular terrain, so stay tuned. See you in the next part.